Greetings and welcome back to Inside the Musician's Brain. I'm your host, Chris Pandolfi from the infamous String Dusters. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Today's episode is all about the future of the acoustic music scene and the hot up-and-coming bands that are making waves out there today and taking the music in so many interesting new directions. I'll be interviewing two of the hot up-and-comers, Clay Street Unit and Mountain Grass Unit, and I will also point you in the direction of a bunch of excellent new acts on the rise and talk a bit about what's happening out there in the ever-expanding, ever-evolving bluegrass and acoustic music world. I had so much fun reading the many responses to the post I put up on my Instagram account. That's Trad Plus on Instagram, asking you, the fans, to help point me in the direction of the notable new bands that are not on my radar, because I know I don't know everything that's going on, and I know that there are a ton of bands cooking right now. And I learned so much from this post and all the responses. Thank you all if you did respond. I read every single response and got back to a bunch of you as well. Had some great conversations about what's going on out there, and my list of up-and-comers grew significantly, and I'll be sharing that list with you in just a few minutes. I will also publish that list at, again, my Instagram page, Trad Plus, and my website, chrispandolfi.com. So stick around for that. It's coming up in just a few minutes. Quick word about my excellent sponsors this season. Turtlebox is the best USB speaker out there right now, hands down. This thing is rugged, it's waterproof, it's portable, and the best part is you can crank it up loud, and the audio quality is really excellent. The battery lasts all day. It's built for adventure, and I've really been digging the newer, more portable Turtlebox, the smaller Turtlebox called the Ranger. For all your USB speaker needs, check out Turtlebox. My other sponsor this season is one of my favorite apparel brands of late, Flylow. I've been wearing my Flylow gear all the time. I wear it when I'm home, chilling, working. I wear it on stage. I wear it when I'm fishing, skiing, adventuring. The list goes on. I dig it because it's functional and it's stylish at the same time, and that is hard to find. It feels good and it looks good and it gets the job done. Flylow turned 20 years old in 2025. Great brand. Very excited to have them on board this season for all your apparel needs. Check out Flylow. Inside the Musician's Brain is also brought to you by Osiris Media. Osiris is home to all kinds of great music podcast content. And Americana Vibes, that's the infamous String Dusters record label. And this season, you've heard me talk about my partnership with volume.com, where the top acts go to stream shows, podcasts, and more. So you can see video of all of season 6 over at Volume. And you can see video of some choice episodes from seasons past, including my interview with Mike Gordon from Phish from season 4. And I recently put up a little excerpt of this on my Instagram page, and it went viral. And I could not believe the conversation raging around Mike's thoughts on how the set list comes together every day for Phish. It was so cool. Phish fans, you are, what's the word? You are passionate. You are opinionated. Never change. I loved seeing all that conversation. So let's do more. I'll be having a live Q&A the first week of February, free and open to the public over at volume.com. Stay tuned to my Instagram account for more intel on that and the Apple Podcast review contest, which I'm about to run back. A simple review over at Apple Podcasts enters you for a chance to win some amazing custom dinnerware by my brother Jono Pandolfi's company, Jono Pandolfi Design. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. Stay tuned for more intel on all of that. All right, here we go. Moving right along. Today's episode, as I said, is all about looking ahead to the future of acoustic music. And my friends, the future is incredibly bright. It really is. It's a far cry from the uncharted waters that we, the Dusters, set sail in roughly 20 years ago. It's just a different world. The music is in a very different place. Simply put, bluegrass is much more popular today, and there are a lot of talented young bands coming into their own. And on today's episode, you will hear from two of those bands, and you will hear about a bunch of others. Coming up, I've got an interview with Sam Walker, lead singer extraordinaire from one of my favorite young bands based right here in Colorado. That's the Clay Street Unit. And after my talk with Sam, you'll hear from the guys in Mountain Grass Unit, who were also kind enough to join me for today's episode. I recently saw them at Strings and Soul, and boy, do they shred. So we got that coming up here in just a minute. As I said, it's a far cry from the bluegrass dark ages of 20-ish years ago when we formed the String Dusters. At that time, we actually very intentionally moved away from using the word bluegrass in our marketing efforts or in any description of the band, because at that time, bluegrass just wasn't that hip. It wasn't a word that would pique fans' interest or get you in the door at the cool gigs or the cool press ops that were going to raise your profile. Now, just to be clear, bluegrass, the music was cool. It always has been. It always will be. But it wasn't hip. It wasn't current. It wasn't a growth market. It was thought of as pretty old timey and pretty dated, even though there was a lot of great music being made really all along. But the term wasn't that hip from a business perspective. If you want the full context of this situation I'm describing here, go to my site, chrispandolfi.com, and follow the Bluegrass Manifesto link where I break it all down and get pretty granular on how some of these changes came to be and the state of affairs when we were getting rolling. So fast forward now, roughly 20 years, and as I said, it's a different world out there. Bluegrass is the hot shit now, and I'd love to see it getting the respect that it deserves. Of course, there are so many factors that have contributed to its growth, including the long-standing influence of some trailblazing bands and some mainstream notoriety as well. But mostly, I think it's simply because bluegrass is so badass. It's real, handcrafted music that is virtuosic with so much soul and some amazing history that includes a growing list of very colorful characters, very colorful purveyors of the music who people are really getting into. It's just great music, right? The sound, the songs, the instruments, the voices, the energy, the rhythm, you really cannot beat it. And now the word is out, and young bands are popping up left and right and taking the music in all kinds of cool new directions. And I wanted to share a few of those with you so you can broaden your bluegrass horizons and enjoy some amazing new music and hear where the music is headed. So I got a list together, but as I said earlier, I knew that I was leaving some bands off that list. So in prepping for this episode, I asked all of you to help me figure out who should be on that list. Thank you again for all of the amazing responses. I checked a lot of these bands. I checked all of these bands out, and damn, there are so many cool artists, cool acts coming up right now, way more than even I knew about. My list grew a ton. And this, of course, is just a small sampling. I know I'm still missing some, but it's a good start. And of course, there are some qualifications here, like how long you've been around. I'm looking for relatively new bands here. And also, what kind of critical mass do you have? How legit is your tour schedule? I want to make sure that these are bands that are actually out there doing the things and have some online presence. And of course, really tending toward acoustic bands, bluegrass bands, that kind of thing. So let's rattle off some names here. Of course, Clay Street Unit and Mountain Grass Unit are high on the list. Shadowgrass is high on the list as well. Saw their name many, many times. Incredible band, shredding players. Seen them a bunch in the last couple years. Broken Compass Bluegrass, very creative band, great players. East Nash Grass, they've been around for a minute, but too good not to include. I know some of the cats in East Nash, and they are absolutely amazing. Wyatt Ellis, a young mandolin player who's really got his foot on the gas recently, and an excellent player with a lot going on. The Fretliners are an excellent band based out here in Colorado that have been doing it for a few years, and their sound is evolving, and they're really sounding good. Magoo, another Colorado band. My hat's off to you, Magoo, because you guys were by far the most mentioned band in the comments, as I said, again, on the post that I put up. And I know you're out there doing it, and I know you've got some fans. So check out Magoo. AJ Lee and Blue Summit. AJ was a guest earlier this season on the pod. She's an amazing artist. They're an amazing band. Fireside Collective has been out there for a few years, but their sound is evolving. If you haven't checked them out recently, give them another listen. Really cool band. Bronwyn Keith Hines, Shelby Means, and of course I got to throw my man Kyle Tuttle in there. All members of Molly Tuttle's band the last few years who are now doing their own thing and all sounding excellent. The Sam Grisman Project. Sam is the son of legendary mandolin player David Grisman, and he's got a very cool band that he's been out there touring with for the last couple of years. Silas Herman and the Tone Unit. Silas is Vince Herman from Leftover Sam and Son, and he's getting his thing together and sounding excellent as well. Trey Wellington, one of my favorite young banjo players. We'll have to have him on the podcast sometime soon. North Fork Crossing, a band from Montana that again has some fans. I saw their name many times in the responses. They are sounding really good. 65 North Pickers, not on my radar at all before I put that post up. Check them out, and they can play. Really cool stuff. Liam Purcell and Cane Mill Road. Killer young bluegrass band who I believe covers one or maybe a couple Duster songs. Doug, D-U-G, is an Irish band, totally not on my radar, but checked them out and just really cool. I had to include them on this list. Check them out. Red Camel Collective, more traditional band, IBMA Emerging Artist of the Year. Excellent pickers as well. Johnny Mullinax is more of an electric artist, but really, really cool music, and they do have an acoustic side, and Johnny was out opening some shows for the Dusters recently and really sounding great. Theoretical Blonde, not on my radar at all, but they have a different sound. They have cool songs, great singing. Remedy Tree, I've been seeing Remedy Tree's posts for the last few years, or the last year or so on Instagram and TikTok, band from Florida, killer banjo player. High Horse is a band from Boston that's very creative with excellent players. And the last one here is a band called Top House. They have great songs and great singing as well. So there you have it. Now, I know I'm leaving some great young acts out here, so feel free to jump on the Instagram post for this episode or my blog post over at chrispandolfi.com about this episode where I will include this list, and let me know who I'm forgetting. Let us know who we should be checking out. And the last thing I want to say is you should all get out there and support these bands. If you dig what you hear, you got to make an effort these days, because making it as an artist has never been more challenging between the streaming landscape, the price of travel, and the overwhelming battle for people's attention. If you dig what you're hearing and you want to keep hearing it, buy a ticket, buy some merch. Don't just sit on the sidelines and take it in like it's free, because a lot of time and energy and love goes into everything you are hearing. And that, my friends, is worthy of our support. Now let's hear from some of the up-and-comers themselves. First, my conversation with Sam Walker from Clay Street Unit, followed by my conversation with Luke, Drury, Sam, and Josiah from Mountain Grass Unit. Here we go. All right, we are here on Inside the Musician's Brain with the lead singer of one of my favorite up-and-coming bands, Clay Street Unit, Sam Walker. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Good to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, what's going on, brother? How are you doing? Where are you? What's shaking in your world?
Things are good. I'm here at home in Denver. I'm enjoying the first snow day of the year. Got about 4 or 5 inches last night, so
yeah, we
had
did.
to go digging through my car to get some stuff this morning. Rude awakening, but here we are.
Nice. Did you get any time to work on our song that we were writing yesterday?
Yeah, I actually went and had dinner last night and a couple glasses of wine and got home and spent a little time. I'm not sure I made any lyrical progress, but I gave it a good try.
Well, sometimes just putting in the time is what's important, because when it comes to songwriting, I like to approach it like I'll give it little chunks of time here and there and just kind of see if anything is percolating in terms of songwriting. You know, I'll sit down to practice banjo and I'll just go for hours. But for songwriting, do you ever work like this where I just give it 3 or 4 shots sometimes during the day just to kind of see if ideas are happening? If they are, I can go with it, and if they're not, I can move on to something else. You ever get into it that way?
Yeah, definitely. You kind of have a phrase or something that sparks it, sit down for 4 or 5 minutes, just kind of fill a blank and you kind of move on. But sometimes I don't know. I think that's an important thing about keeping the instruments, around you in the room. So when you have that little spark, you can at least sit down and see if there's any inspiration. But yeah, I can totally relate to just throughout the day, kind of chiseling at it and nothing really coming about from it, but just the act of staying at it.
Yeah, staying at it and giving it some fresh energy every now and then. That's cool. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the songwriting process here in a minute, but I want to start out by hearing in your own words a little bit about the Clay Street origin story, because you guys haven't been around that long and now you're making waves, and this new record is on the way, Sin and Squalor, due out February 13th. So take us behind the scenes a little bit. How did you guys form? When did Clay Street come together? And what is the origin story of your band?
Yeah, that's a great question. It started really organically. I had a buddy who introduced me to a buddy of his who played banjo, Jack Klein, who played banjo with us. And he set us up. We went over to Zuni Street Brewing in Denver, had a couple beers, got to chatting. And next thing you know, like 3-4 hours later, he was at my house, had gone home, picked his banjo up. We were kind of inseparable since. And we immediately looked into booking some little duo trio gigs, stuff like that, just to, wet our whistle, get out there, get a little uncomfortable. And next thing you know, we had buddies in the community and, that were affiliated with the scene, but weren't necessarily, players or were kind of on the outskirts, that kind of reached out and were interested in, just playing, and everything built from there really organically. Added Brad Larison on the pedal steel. He was working over at Zuni where we would all go meet and hang out. And he mentioned he played pedal steel, came and jammed with us a few times, and it just felt like a natural fit. And then we had a couple guys, the Colorado band Morsel, awesome, jamgrass Americana band, that I went on tour with a few of them when they had some band hiccups and some people couldn't make a certain run. And that 6-7 shows really kind of changed the trajectory of Clay Street. Met those guys and became so much closer to them. And when things kind of went their separate ways with Morsel and everyone, had the different avenues of life that took over.
Sure.
They came over and started playing with Clay Street, Jack and Scotty. So it just felt like such a natural and, again, organic, move for everybody, and everybody felt comfortable. So everything just really kind of fell piece by piece into place. And it wasn't this big overhaul of let's start a band today and it needs to be these 5-6 people or this trio or whatever. It all just made more sense the more the sound progressed. The pieces just kind of fell into our lap, and it was really nice just kind of being friends with everybody, and there wasn't all this musical pressure. It just all really happened pretty naturally.
That's awesome. Love the Morsel guys. I produced a couple records for those guys, which I think is ultimately how I connected with the Clay Street crew, because Scotty and then later Jack, the bass player, joined up with Clay Street, and a great group of musicians and a great piece of the Denver music scene. I've been to the Zuni Street Brewing Company, and it's a real kind of center of that scene and the bands and the guys that you're mentioning. And it's cool to see this eventually emerge. I'm curious, was there a point when you guys realized, like, all right, we're doing this full time? How did you cross that barrier from being a band that played maybe only local gigs to a band that was actually going to make records, go on tour, and make a go of it? How did that look?
Yeah, so I think, like we were just saying, we were looking for tiny gigs at breweries around town and just, anything to have fun. And stumbled into a gig over at Cervantes on the patio, and we were shocked how many people showed up. And then from there, booked a gig at the other side, and it sold out, and then played the ballroom, and it just kind of all kept snowballing. And we didn't have much music out, but it was kind of this, local word of mouth that just kept growing. And, what are you doing tonight? I guess I'm going to go see Clay Street. And the circle just kept getting bigger, to a point where Scotty Morrill, our good buddy over at Cervantes, put us in touch with management and our agent. And we had never really thought about those components of being in a band. It was all so fun and new and fresh. And luckily we got to meet some great people who we really trust and enjoy working with. But, that kind of changed the narrative of what we were thinking, that people wanted to come, spend their time and efforts to help kind of clear a lane for us and help us accomplish what we want to accomplish. and it just started opening doors. We were willing to say yes, but we didn't know what to say yes to, where to go, how to do it. And so Scotty really opened that door for us. And I think at that point, once we went on our first tour and we kind of sold out a couple of rooms because the buzz of a new band coming to a city, small club, and we all just kind of had this feeling like, I don't know what else we could do. This is it. And it just felt so right. And, we've been on the road for 3 years or so, and it's felt so nice. I know it sounds crazy, but there's 6 of us and everybody just gets along so well. It feels so easy, despite the hardships that come along with it naturally. But I don't know. I think that the group of guys collectively together just felt like this was the right people to do it with. And so once we had that team behind us, it kind of felt like time to just push it as far as we could.
How did it feel that first time you guys saddled up in a conversion van or one of the passenger vans and rolled out of town? Like, you packed the instruments in the back and it's like you're living the dream, right? I mean, isn't that such a memorable thing?
I mean, it's one of my favorite memories. I mean, Brendan's back there rearranging for 2 hours before we've left the driveway. Everybody was just so excited. I remember when we bought our van, just, this is ours. We're taking it out on the road. And I mean, it was like Christmas morning, everyone was just so excited you can talk about it and say all these things about playing all these shows, but when the day comes for the first time you're taking it out, it's a different feeling for sure.
Well, I'm excited for you guys. And I should mention, it's no small feat that you are out on early tours selling out shows. Like, that's a big deal. That's something that not a lot of bands experience, that buzz. And also there's a lot of bands out there and there's a lot of competition these days. And there are a lot of challenges facing young bands. And I was curious to hear from your perspective, like, what are some of the real obstacles, whether that's travel or getting the business in line? Like, what do you think are some of the hardest things to accomplish for a young up and coming band?
Yeah. I think, for us in particular, we're a pretty big band. There's 6 of us. So that naturally comes with its own set of, responsibility to make sure everyone's accounted for. But then there's, the hotel rooms obviously get more cumbersome. You need more space. You need a bigger trailer. There's certain things that just inherently come with being a bigger band. But I think the hardest part for us is just living in Denver, especially. Nothing's really convenient when you're driving everywhere. You can route east and west and north and south as much as you want.
Sure.
But there's just only so many markets between Denver and Kansas City. And I think for us, routing can be pretty difficult, just making it all not exhausting. It's already tiresome enough. Just, finishing a gig, driving 2 hours after the gig to get halfway to the next gig. We're lucky that everyone gets along and that we have 6 people in the front of house to alternate driving. So nobody has to get too much of the blunt end of that. I will self-admit that I drive the least probably. So I'll take accountability there.
Yeah, the traveling is tough, especially when you're in those early years, because you don't have a lot of leverage. You don't have a big profile. So you got to kind of go where the good gigs are. And I remember we reminisce and joke sometimes about how we had an early String Dusters tour where the first gig was in Seattle and the next gig was in New York. And we were in the van and we had a decision to make, and like a lot of those decisions in the early years, you have to kind of take what comes your way, and that's the whole point of doing it. It's like you gotta see what opportunities are there, and you gotta take what you can, and you gotta knock it out of the park, and you gotta grow. And for you guys now, part of the trajectory and part of the growth is going to be this new record, your debut record, which obviously in the intro I mentioned that I was very fortunate to produce. Loved working with you guys, but let's talk a little bit about Sin and Squalor, out February 13th. Tell me a little bit about the process for this record. Like, before I even ever came into the picture, did you guys really dedicate time to songwriting as a group? Was that something you took on, or you took on more with Scotty? And then ultimately, what led you to that point where you were like, all right, we're ready to make a statement?
Yeah. First of all, just wanted to say we're awfully grateful to have worked with you and for all the production wisdom and everything
Feeling
you
is
did to
mutual,
make the
bud.
record what it is. But the touching on the process before you got involved, I was thinking about it this morning, just kind of thinking about the record and that we finally announced that it's coming out. Just with your first record, they say you have your whole life to write your first record, and then comes the second record. And so I think something that was really special about this record is that it wasn't one distinct period of time. I felt like I wrote some songs when I was 24, some songs
Mm.
when I was 27, some songs when I was 30. And they were all different phases and kind of perspectives of my life and where I was, and kind of a timestamp, but they all kind of flow together from the same narrative, if that makes sense, the same voice. And Scotty and I wrote a few of the songs really early, right when I moved to Colorado, and tweaked them over the years over and over and over. And then had some that right when we started Clay Street that I wrote before Scotty and Jack had joined the band. And then when Scotty got involved, everything kind of changed. I mean, he was really pushing the creative side of the band a lot harder, a lot further, just trying to get involved and really make sure we were putting out a product we believed in and felt confident about moving forward. So he and I spent a lot of time on 4 or 5 of those tracks that are on the record. Where Have You Gone, Drive, Choctaw County that we did with Lindsay Lou. We spent a lot of time together really mining away at what we wanted those songs to sound like and bouncing off each other. And I'd never had that experience. So it came in a lot of different waves, that first record.
That's interesting because you wrote a lot of these songs, or at least some of these songs, it sounds like, long before the band ever existed. So you didn't have a concept in your mind of like, this is for a bluegrass band, or this is a country song, or this would really lend itself well to this instrumentation. And that tracks because I remember when I came into the picture, I feel like a lot of what we did was taking these great songs and then figuring out how to arrange them for this instrumentation, for this band, for this group of players. And that's such a big part of the process, right? Like to me,
Yeah.
that's an additional part of writing. People think about songwriting and they put so much weight on songwriting, and songwriting is so essential, but for a band there's this additional step that I consider almost as important as the writing, where everyone has to kind of write on their own instruments, like how am I going to approach this song, what works well together. But do you know what I'm saying? Like that was a big part of what we did.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that experience with you, what I'll always take away from it is probably the most important piece was that the song's finished. Now it's time to arrange the song. There's a huge difference in the songwriting component and then the band writing.
Mm-hmm.
And how just the little things I just enjoyed those 3 or 4 days of pre-production so much of just seeing, and even the things that didn't work, just trying different little nuances and different hold the one, jump the one, double chorus, any of that, just little things like that that are so simple but can have such a huge effect on drawing the audience in and out in the studio to what you're trying to do and hold their attention where you want it. I cherish those days because it was so cool just seeing how one little part, one little counter melody can just change the way
sure.
it gets stuck in your ear.
It's so true. And it takes time because if you're adjusting, for example, a little piece of, say, the end of the song, well, then you need to kind of go through it to the point where you feel like you've got your head around it. And then the real test is to run the whole song with that little piece, and we were encountering this yesterday when we were working on writing a totally new song. It's like, all right, we're tweaking on this one piece, but to see if it really works, now you got to rewind and play the whole thing. And that creative process takes a lot of time and energy, a lot of focus. But I agree, man. I'll never forget. We were rehearsing. Whose house was that we did our pre-production stuff at in the basement there? Was that your place?
Yeah, it was my place.
Okay.
I'm sitting right where I sat while we did that.
Okay. And I came in and I knew Scotty, but I didn't know the rest of you guys. And I think your roommate was upstairs in the kitchen and he knew that I was coming. And then I sort of made my way downstairs and it was like 6 dudes and a mountain of gear in the basement where you're at right now. And it really was so fun getting to sort of see the machine work. And for me, those sessions are a lot about learning what's possible for you guys, and kind of seeing how people work and where the ideas are coming from. And I think it was great, man. I believe in the end product. I think we really did some great work, and I can't wait for the world to hear this record. Now, interestingly, we did this record a long time ago, and you guys kind of got caught in a little bit of limbo, and now the record is coming out, and you guys are on, it's Leo 33, is that right?
Yep, Leo 33.
Yeah, Zach Top's label, which, I mean, a great place for you to land, and a lot of common threads with Zach Top, who's doing big things right now, but also an interesting story about signing an initial deal and then having that deal fall through, and some of the stuff that happens behind the curtain. In a nutshell, tell us how that went down.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we recorded this record a long time ago. It feels like it was only a couple, 2.5, 3 years ago, but we had been shopping the record around a little bit. Our managers had, and we had some interest. Ended up signing a deal with a label under Sony called Monument Records. They were great folks. Really loved the team over there. It was a great opportunity. And we had gone down to Nashville, maybe, I don't know. We'd released 2 singles, Let's Get Stoned and Where Have You Gone, that were on the record you produced. And we were getting ready to announce, no joke, the record in about 5-6 days. And we went to Nashville, and our managers, Josh and Andy, had lunch with the head of their department at the time. And they came back from lunch, and we were all looking forward to how the talk went and how everything went down. And we're sitting in an Airbnb in Nashville on a Friday morning, and they come back and they're like, well, guys, we have some news. There is no label.
Phew.
And so, it caught us all pretty off guard. We drove to Mobile, Alabama, and started tour the next day. But, everything happened for a reason. It definitely caught us off guard, but it taught us a lot about, a lot of people, you sign a record deal, and I don't want to say we were in a bad situation at all, because we weren't, but you're just stuck with what you signed, and we really had a chance to learn that a lot of bands don't get what that process looks like, what the negotiation, what working with the attorney, all the stuff that you never really imagine as a kid when you want to sign a record deal that comes with it. So signing the Leo 33 deal felt like a lot more informed decision. It felt like we knew what we were getting into a lot more, and we're really grateful to be with the amazing team over there.
That's got to be tough, though, because the landscape of record deals and record labels has changed drastically. And I should point out that you guys are really lucky to have this opportunity. First with Sony Monument, then with Leo 33. And I think that speaks volumes to what people are hearing in this band and what they think the potential is. But it takes a while to sign a record deal. And in a world where you're used to being self-sufficient, being DIY, and we made this record and we worked on our own timeline and we got everything done. And then all of a sudden you're waiting to hear back from the lawyer, and it's like kind of this grind, it's slow. So I can only imagine when you guys heard that news, there must've been a second where you were like, wait a second, is this really happening?
Yeah. I think everyone was like, let's release the record next Friday anyway, and they were like, okay, slow your roll. We got here. Yeah, it was a really crazy day. I'll never forget. I called my mom, and she was like, she didn't even have words, because it was just so out of left field. You just don't expect to wake up and the deal you signed 90 days before has kind of disappeared. But again, it all worked out for us. We're really grateful that a second opportunity came about. But like you mentioned, it feels like it's been a while since that record. But in reality, we took all the right steps, I think, to make sure we put it out in the best light and gave it the best chance to reach as many years as possible. And just proud to have worked on it with you.
Yeah, man, me too. And I agree. I think everything happens for a reason. And if you lament the fact that it didn't go the way that you were expecting it to go, well, then you got to kind of look back and wonder, what were those expectations all about, really? Because if we get too far ahead of ourselves, we can oftentimes set ourselves up for failure. Meanwhile, if you take what comes now, you guys have really, I think, built some heat up and are going to honestly capitalize on this situation. I think more people know who Clay Street is. And, there are some singles that have come out on streaming. So as you say, everything happens for a reason, and everybody should stay tuned, because there already are a few tracks out, but February 13th is when the whole record drops, and it's a great one. Now, before we wrap up today, I want to just hear a little bit about your influences, and I love to ask guests who they're listening to, who they've listened to in the past. Could be new influences, could be old, but let's hip the listeners to some good music. What you got?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because Spotify Wrapped came out today. So it told me exactly what I've been listening to.
What were you into this last year?
I'm all over apparently I was into gothic country, bluegrass, and jam. So shocker there. But then pop and indie folk. So I was a little all over the map this year. But that's kind of how my music taste and influences are. I grew up a ton on like classic 70s, 80s rock. My dad was the kind of dad who drove to school with the windows rolled down, singing every word to every rock song on the radio. So I grew up a ton on the Eagles, Dire Straits, Rolling Stones, like all that classic stuff. And I loved all that. But then kind of as I got more into music, got more into, some more singer-songwriter country stuff, Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, were two guys I really took a liking to kind of in my early 20s. And then obviously, a ton of classic country, 90s country is what I grew up on to an extent, going up to the lake, having a good time.
Gotta love that 90s country, man.
Yeah, it's just, you're sitting on a boat. That's what you got to listen to, right? At least where I grew up. So I think the way I write songs and what I listen to is totally different. I'd say in the last few years, I've listened to a lot more like stuff that's not exactly who we play with and what we play.
Like, give me an example.
Like Pine Grove is a band that I'm really into and really dig. It's just a little bit different. I love Susto, just kind of like some more indie rock stuff in that genre and that vein that it's more singer-songwriter meets these different type of arrangements. It's just so, it's emotional.
You know what I love about that stuff is I feel sometimes like indie songwriters don't have necessarily the playbook, the book of rules that musicians who come from a more sort of set tradition have, if that makes sense. Like indie songwriters just make it up as they go along, and you get some real creative and different and cool songs that way versus like artists who just come more out of country. I don't know. I love indie rock too, and that's one of the reasons I'm into it.
And speaking on that, like this last year, those Waxahachie and MJ Linderman records were both killer. And they're both kind of this alt country kind of, but like you said, there's no boundary of the songwriting and the way can turn a phrase and the way you can make what you want to work within the song structure. And it's just, both of those records are amazing.
Thank you so much for joining me, Sam. I really appreciate you, brother. And everyone stay tuned. Sin and Squalor is coming out February 13th. Sam Walker, thanks for joining me on the podcast today, brother.
Pleasure as always, Panda.
All right, we're here on Inside the Musician's Brain, and my guests today are members of one of the hottest up-and-coming bands on the acoustic scene, Mountain Grass Unit. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I'm excited to hear what's going on in your guys' world because a lot of people are paying attention to Mountain Grass Unit, and you guys are relatively new to the scene. So how many years have you guys been playing shows under that name?
Probably about 6 at this point, I think. Maybe 7.
It's definitely a lot longer than it seems because we all went to high school together. So it's like we were playing shows, but not really playing shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we were the 50th birthday party band of the greater Birmingham area for most of our early years. Played all like our mom's 50th birthdays and like a lot of stuff like that.
So what does it take to really send it at a 50th birthday party when you're the bluegrass band? What really makes that kind of event go off?
Yeah, it's all about the age group. I mean, knowing the songs to play.
I think it was funny because like, we were young and for like, a couple, like $100 or whatever, we'd show up with us 3 and a full PA and play for like 4 hours straight. So I think that's one thing they enjoyed is like we
Good
didn't
value.
really yeah, we didn't really take many breaks, and we were really affordable. So like, oh yeah, let's just get them, and it was just word of mouth. So we were just like, because we just had fun doing it, and like that was in high school. We're like, we're rich, you can split that, get like $30, and be like on your way. And but yeah, it was a good time. There was definitely a lot of funny moments, especially like in the summers. We play a lot of lakes. Like there's a lot of lakes in Alabama, so we go around and play like for people at their cabins and whatnot. And definitely a lot of hot, sweaty days out there. It was some of them were fun, some of them were brutal.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people are hearing about you guys recently for the first time, but like a lot of bands, when you discover them, the reality is that they've already been around doing their thing for years. And it's those like early under the radar years where you guys probably got a lot of great experience at those shows. It's like the Beatles, like the 10,000 hours concept, it probably really helped you guys to get that bass, like your groove, your sound, your rapport playing together, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, so let's talk about what got you guys into bluegrass. What opened that door for you guys?
Well, I think for all of us it's a little bit different. Luke and I sort of started playing bluegrass when we were younger, in elementary school or so, and played at this local place in Birmingham called Fretted Instruments. And Luke played banjo at the time. I played mandolin, and didn't feel like very long after that Sam started learning bass, electric bass with Luke. Luke was sort of showing Sam a bunch of stuff, and at one point, Luke and I had this group, and Sam decided that he was going to pick up the upright because if a friend had.
Well, I guess it was more of that Luke was like, because we had a rock band, an electric band that us three were in with some other guys in middle school. And then as we were getting into early, like about to go to high school, that kind of like, we stopped really playing as much. And Luke was like, hey, like, you should come and play. Because on the side, they've been doing their duo bluegrass thing the whole time. They called it was Ann Black, like Anderson, Luke Black. You should come and play with me or play with us, But Luke was like, but you got to get an upright bass because it's like, it's bluegrass. So you can't do an electric. I was like, okay, I get that. And luckily enough, my mom had a friend who had one for some reason. I'm not quite sure. So he let me borrow that. And we played our first gig 3 days later I had an upright bass for 3 days, and we played our first gig, and it went about as well as you think it would go. But I just kept trying and, learned a lot from these guys. Luckily, they'd been playing for a while, and then, yeah.
But if we go back kind of before that, like Luke, why don't you tell me what was the bluegrass music that got you guys into it? Like, what were your influences? What were your inspirations that set you on that path?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. It's like festivals I grew up going to, music that was playing in my house, when I was little. I don't really come from a musical family. My parents don't play or anything, but they, for some reason, I was watching these old videos over Thanksgiving break of us, like as little kids. And in the background, you can just hear music playing. And there's there's Irish music in the background. There's like random like bluegrass album band songs playing in the background.
Wow. Okay.
And so I guess it's always been around me. I just had to find it, and then I started taking lessons and then kind of connecting actual mechanics to like the ear, and it all clicked from there,
Very cool. So then you guys started playing as a trio, and then did there kind of come a point where you realized like this is a thing, we're going to try and go on the road, travel, and make a go of it as a pro band? When did that happen?
I'm the younger one. This is when we were still a trio, like you were saying. And these guys went off to college. Luke went to Berkeley and Sam went to Alabama. And I was kind of still at home for a little bit. And we didn't really know, we were playing gigs and stuff around town like we'd always done, but we weren't really sure what we were going to do after that. We weren't putting a definite end to what we were doing, but we weren't really sure like what the group was going to look like in the meantime. For the summer following that year, Luke had put together like a little mini tour, and we went and tested it out. We got in my car, which is very, very small, and put a PA system in there and a box of t-shirts, and went around to some spots. Some were pretty great, some were okay, and then we had some standouts. Like we went to the Red Bar in Florida. We went to some places in Atlanta and Charlotte, like stuff that we could access from Birmingham. And once I got up to Berkeley and we were all in school, we got a message from our agent, Yitzy, and he sent us an email. He's like, hey guys, I went to Berkeley too. And believe it or not, I'm from your neighborhood and Birmingham as well. I'd love to help y'all out. Here's the bands that I represent. And, he gave us a bunch of just people that not necessarily he represented, but the whole Wasserman agency represented.
Yeah.
Bob Weir, Sturgill, like just all these names that were just like freaked us out, And, man, him and another agent, Matt Runner, they kind of teamed up and, man, just shot us into a next. We just realized, we're hitting the road. And that's when we got a van. And
when was that? How long ago was that?
2021 was the year we did that initial tour.
And we made
without the agent.
I think it was 22.
Yeah. And then 22 is when we ended up going with the agent, right?
I think it was 22. We did the summer tour, and 23 we went with the Yitzy.
Just to give you a little more information on Luke did a great job, but the tour that he booked, we made it from Birmingham down to like the Panhandle, Florida, made it to Atlanta, and as far north as Asheville, North Carolina. Then the next year with Yitzy, we made it from Birmingham to Seattle to New York and just all over. And so it was like that was really what sent us on and then right after that, we started seeing a lot of like growth. Like, you guys have always had pretty good social media following, but the band itself started picking up from that and then playing shows around the country and festivals. People were like, oh, wow, like, who are these kids that, play bluegrass from Alabama and all that? So that was really cool to see. And we've just, I guess, been having fun with it. And,
well, that's the key right there. I got to say, having fun with it and finding a way to express yourself that feels good, that feels natural. And obviously what you guys are doing is connecting with people. It's sweet. It's great to see. And I'm excited because I think we got some shows coming up together, right? You guys are on a couple Duster shows. That's going to be great. And I was telling Josiah before the call, saw him play with you guys for the first time at Targhee this past summer at the Trap Bar. At the Dusters played the main stage, and then you guys were up at the Trap Bar, and we had a couple hours till bus call. So a few of us went up there, and it sounded great. And Josiah, you sounded great, man. I love your fiddle playing. Tell me, how did you connect with these guys? Because you're the most recent member, right?
Yeah, so I joined about a year and a half ago, but before that, I guess I first met Luke. It must have been like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 now. When you were,
I guess, about 4.
Yeah, he came and toured ETSU, which I was a student there at the time, and I guess I guess now former boss, but anyways, he asked me to put together a jam for him. And so Luke's dad dropped him off at my house, and we had a jam with us and Trey Wellington and Jacob Metz, and realized we kind of like a lot of the same music, stayed in touch. And then when y'all did that tour, was it the 2022 one that you booked, Luke?
It is the 2022.
Whatever you said it was, yeah. When they made it to Asheville, North Carolina, since I'm in Johnson City, that's fairly close. I drove down there and sat in for a song, and then a year later they came through Chapel Hill, and I drove out for that and sat in on the full show. And then later that year, the guys asked me to come record on the record on Running from Trouble, what became Running from Trouble. And then while we were recording that, they asked me to come play the first 10 dates of the 2024 tour. And then 2 days into that tour, they asked me to come join on for the rest of the summer.
2 days
into it. Yeah, we were going to do a full 10 days. Like, all right, we're just going for that because and then 2 days into it, we're like, he's too good. We can't go back.
Well, it's a good fit. You guys really sound great together. And I'm curious to hear a little bit more about some of the things that have amounted to getting you guys to where you're at. Like, what are some of those moments? I have to assume that Revival was one of those moments, right? Where Billy couldn't make it, or Renewal, where Billy couldn't make it to Renewal. You guys ended up sort of being part of like the house band that filled in for him, right? How did that go down? And how do you think that has had an impact on where you guys are headed?
Yeah, man, that was definitely huge for us, because obviously a lot of pressure on us as well, you know, in the moment to like, you know, be able to provide for all these people who came literally mainly to see, you know, Billy and his band. But it almost worked out in our favor. We were just getting thrown random sets, you know, just all throughout the day. Like, I think that one day, the next day after Billy flew out, we ended up playing about 8 sets in one day. And it just got into like muscle memory where we're just doing it. And after that, yeah, dude, I think like social wise and everything, like just looking on Instagram and stuff, it's like the amount of followers coming in and activity and stuff was just, it spiked after that a ton.
So tell me though, like, how did it actually go down? You guys are there and you've got a set plan for the weekend. And then at what point do you kind of get the news that Billy's not going to be around and then you guys are going to have to cover some of these shows? Like, how did it go down?
So first of all, like, we didn't even really come in prepared, because we're all flying in from different spots, right? We haven't had time to practice. We have school during the week and we fly out on the weekend, and we get to the festival. We show up literally 10 minutes before our set.
Because y'all's flight got canceled the day before. Yeah, you almost didn't make it. Me and Josiah were like, oh, shoot.
And so we weren't prepared going into it. You know, like, we had songs that we know and like did like a general idea of how to get to point A and B. But, you know, we'd hop up there and kind of just jam, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if y'all want to talk about how.
Yeah, I mean,
Billy
you know,
thing went down.
we got there and we played our first set, which was, I mean, we probably got there 10 minutes before we were supposed to play, you know, so we haul all of our stuff on the stage and do that set. Went great, maybe did 1 or 2 more, and we're getting lunch, and Billy's band is all back there, but Billy is running a little behind. He's probably on the bus or whatever. And eventually he comes over and he's got a plate in his hand, and there's no seats at the catering table. Like, there's just too many people in the crew and stuff filling up the table. So he's like, oh, okay, well, no problem. He goes over to another table by himself and he just starts eating or whatever. And we kind of look at him. We're like, hey, dude, you know, it's all right if you want to come eat with us. And so he's like, oh, okay, sick. So he comes over and we start talking. And I think Luke asked the question, like, hey, man, like, does it bother you when we cover your songs? And he was like, no, absolutely not. You know, it was really relieving to hear a response that he was like, I'm honored to hear
Sure.
people play my songs, you know, and that was really fulfilling for us. And so we kind of walked our way there all giddy, you know, like, oh, we just, you know, got the green light from Billy Strings. So it wasn't till after maybe 2 sets more, not long after that I got a text from the liaison. Report to the main stage right now. We had another set that was about
or something like that. Right?
Yeah, we were on our way to like go load in for another set, and they like turned us around and took us back to the main stage where we were just eating.
So we thought it was like a Billy sit-in or whatever. So they get us back there, and Bill, their manager, is like, all right, we need some songs. Keep in mind, we have no idea what's going on here. We were actually about to roll up to the main stage without our pedal boards if they didn't tell us that we needed them, you know? So we go there and we're like, you know, oh, I start mentioning songs. Oh, we could play Gold Rush. We could play this tune. And he kind of like looks at us. He's like, nah, dude, Billy songs. We need Billy songs. And I was like, oh, and we still didn't really understand. We were kind of getting a hint, and it wasn't until like 2 hours later that, I mean, really, we were sitting there for a while. The whole band gets up. Everyone's like, where's Billy? You know, we'd like to announce that Billy's, you know, just flew out. You know, he's having a baby. Allie's, you know, about to have
So that
his
was how
baby.
you learned about that.
That is
Yeah,
literally how
they
we
didn't
learned about it.
No way.
We just looked at each other. We were like, "Oh shit!"
You're forgetting the
after-
funniest part though is when we got there and they're like, figure out some songs, we'll be right back. Stay here, don't get drunk, is what they told us.
Yes.
So, we're like, okay. I thought that part was hilarious.
That was really it. No one knew what was going on or what they were going to do, but everyone was cool, calm, and collected. And I mean, once they told us that, it's kind of natural that you're like, okay, I don't know what's about to happen. It's like waiting for a beheading or something, you know. You're like, oh, I don't know what's about to happen, you know. But yeah, we got up there and played, and it was just a blast, man. It was and like Luke was saying, it was like after that, you know, our social media presence and all that stuff was fantastic, and he just really threw us a bone on that one.
Yeah, and I'll add that. So that was the first night where Luke and Jury sat in with the band and they played 2 songs. Me and Josiah, honestly, it would have been really cool to play that night, but I think for me personally, it was like a proud dad moment. We were out there because like obviously we're gonna get a video of it, and I couldn't help myself from not even watching them, just watching the crowd, because they got out there and y'all started cutting into Turmoil and Tinfoil, and the crowd went just nuts. And I think that moment of them getting up there, because I don't think many people had seen our first set that day and everything, and that was like the first big day of the Billy set, was like the whole festival was like, okay, who are these kids, you know, like looking at Luke and Jury. So then the next like day when after they sat in, they're like, hey guys, we're gonna have you do a main stage set tomorrow at noon, and then it'll be normal. And then we get there the next day and we're playing, you know, those 8 sets or whatever. But I think we had a lot of people coming to all the sets, and I think that probably wouldn't have happened if, you know, they hadn't got the opportunity to sit in, because they actually, like, you know, we would have just been like a side attraction sort of thing.
Yeah, it was really just right place, right time. I feel like, you know, any other band could have got up there and played, but they reached out to us for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, you guys were a great fit for that, and clearly it resonated, you know, it connected, because it has, from the outside looking in, been a part of what has kind of set you guys on your current path. So tell me, Drury, why don't you tell me what you guys got coming up? You got a big tour coming up in January. Where are you going to be?
Oh, we're going to be all over the Midwest. And I know we mentioned it at the beginning, but it's worth saying again. We're going to be doing some dates with y'all. We're up in the Midwest range, right? Those little Midwesty states.
Yep.
Yep, we got that. And then we got another tour planned for April, which we're going to be more so focusing on the East Coast. And in between there, we got a couple exciting things. We're going to be recording an album pretty soon. We just signed with a Dual Tone Records.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so we're super stoked to be able to get in the studio. I might be careful here just so I don't, like, you know, say too much too soon, but I don't know. But we're excited for that. And in between there, in early March, we're going to be going to Australia to play some dates, which will be really
sweet.
fun. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear what kind of influences do you guys have that are not bluegrass? Like what's some of the music that you feel like is bleeding in and having an effect on what you guys do that's kind of outside that obvious realm of acoustic music?
Well, I mean, looking at my whatever the wrapped thing is, you know, for your listening.
Spotify?
Yeah.
What'd you get
Spotify
into this
Wrapped
last
or
year?
Apple Music. My number 1 was Allman Brothers Band. And I'm a huge, just, you know, I love that style. I love vocally how it sounds too and everything. But then I also had like Oscar Peterson on there. So kind of getting into some of that jazz piano. Like, I just love the way Oscar solos, man. I mean, he's a
bad man. What about you, Drury? What are you into that's kind of outside the norm?
Well, I'm a big Grateful Dead fan. I listen to a lot of Dead. That was my top. Allman Brothers as well. I'm a big Allman Brothers guy. Luke was reading the Greg Allman biography and passed it down to me, so I'm reading that as well. And
My Cross to Bear.
Yes.
Woo.
Yeah, getting into that history.
That's a heavy read, man. Those guys, wow. The Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers. It's quite a legacy and quite a history too. I mean, just the stories and the tragedy and the music. it's pretty unbelievable to behold everything that went into that body of work. There was it wasn't easy. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. And I really like the aspect of, I think we can connect to just the Allman Brothers being like playing the Southern circuit and stuff like that. It's very relatable. Yeah. And I mean, other than that, the band was on my Wrapped. I listened to a lot of the band.
Just got Robbie Robertson's book, Testimony.
Oh, really?
I haven't cracked into it yet, but I'm a big music bios guy. They're the best stories out there.
They are, yeah. And I'm particularly into Levon Helm just because of the fact that I'm a drummer as well, and I usually sing while I play drums. So I really get an inspiration from Levon Helm, who sings and plays drums, and also is a mandolin player, and written some of my favorite songs. So
very cool.
Definitely a lot of rock 70s influences there for sure.
Let's keep going down the line. Sam, what about you, man? What are some like more current influences on you?
I hate to hop on the train here, but like Southern Rock's a big one for me. Allman Brothers on mine. Leonard Skinner was on there. Really like Marcus King band. Marcus King,
he's
same
great.
thing. Yeah, killer stuff there. I'm also into reggae a good bit. Growing up, I listened to a lot of reggae. I think that kind of what made me interested in playing bass, because it's bass lines are a big part of reggae. But yeah, besides that, I'm kind of all over the board. I just kind of have different playlists for different things, and I just but yeah, mainly Southern rock.
What about you, Josiah?
Joe? Yeah, well, going through my, I guess I'm on Apple Music, but I went through my basically same thing as Wrapped, and it was, yeah, I know, but it was all like, it was mostly all bluegrass this year, just really all in on that. But I also was teaching at ETSU this last semester, and I was teaching jam band and honky tonk band. So I was kind of diving into a little bit of Jerry Garcia, and also we did a lot of in the honky tonk band, like Webb Pierce and some classic country stuff. Obviously, it's
very
honky
cool.
tonk, so all over the place, I guess.
Well, boys, I gotta say, I'm excited to see where you all are headed. And I'm excited to team up for some shows coming up. And I'm very grateful that you guys took the time to join me today on Inside the Musician's Brain.
Dude, Chris, it's an honor, man.
Thank you, man. We're excited for this shows.
Yeah, me too, man. Looking forward to teaming up. Everybody go out and check out Mountain Grass Unit, and we'll see you guys out there soon.